Number 7. The Monsell Seaforts. Naval fortifications have been around for centuries in order to block enemy landings and assaults. In England, there are still several that exist dating back to the Napoleonic Wars that took place between 1803 and 1815. But these days, the forts are used for more peaceful purposes. Guy Monsell, a British engineer, came up with an idea during the Second World War to create a sea fortification that would be able to annihilate incoming enemy aircraft. And so, the Monsell Seaforts were born, built to defend the UK's skies from German air raids. Construction began on the forts in 1941, with them mainly being comprised of steel and reinforced concrete. These weren't just ordinary naval fortifications, though. They were essentially pontoon barges that were placed underwater with several towers, rising roughly 70 feet above the surface of the Thames estuary. Their installation was completed the following year in 1942, but by the time they were finished, air raids were becoming increasingly rare. This location was chosen for the forts because they stood to guard Liverpool's vital convoy port. During the war, Liverpool received many convoys that would deliver essential goods needed by Britain. But because of the city's location, it became vulnerable to bombers flying over England. The Thames estuary fortifications were also on the Luftwaffe's flight path as they headed to bomb London and other industrial centers like Birmingham. The seaforts are made up of a collection of 7 towers, and there are walkways connecting each of them to the central control tower that's situated in the middle of the grouping. The towers were all fitted with 2 40mm Bofors guns and 2 3.75-inch guns, as it was their job to deter and report air raids carried out by the Germans. In the end, the forts exceeded everyone's expectations, and in total managed to shoot down 30 flying bombs and 22 planes. But in the years following the war, the Monsell Seaforts were largely abandoned and were officially decommissioned in the late 1950s. These fortifications are still standing, though, just off the coast of Whitstable, near the mouth of the Thames estuary. They look like giant tripods rising out of the water, and they'd certainly be impressive to see in person. So if you ever want to take a trip, boat tours are offered today for locals and tourists alike to get a first-hand look at these bizarre structures, which serve to remind us of a bygone era. Number 6. Winchester Mystery House. An eccentric woman from New Haven, Connecticut named Sarah Winchester moved to San Jose, California in 1886 in order to start a new life. Once she arrived, she purchased an 8-room farmhouse and began a small renovation project on the property that would end up taking a whopping $5.5 million and a full 36 years to complete. But construction only ceased on the home when Sarah passed away in 1922. By the time the woman was done building, the Winchester Mansion, as it's been called, was nothing short of a modern marvel, complete with multiple elevators, indoor plumbing, central heating, and a hot shower. The house even had 2 basements and more than 160 rooms in total, with 40 of them being bedrooms. But that's not all, because this mansion had more to it than meets the eye. Inside there are 2,000 doors, but interestingly, not all of them can be walked through. And if that sounds odd, it's because it is. One door leads to a kitchen sink at the bottom of an 8-foot shaft, while another opens to a 15-foot drop that'll land you right in the bushes in the mansion's garden. The doors to nowhere aren't the only bizarre feature you'll find in this house, though. There are stairs that extend to ceilings, secret passages, and stained glass windows that were installed in specific places so they wouldn't get any light. There's also a particularly unusual cabinet that, when opened, extends throughout 30 rooms of the mansion. Nobody's really sure why Sarah Winchester demanded that constant changes be made to her large estate, but there are, of course, some stories. The most prevalent explanation for Sarah's continuous renovations was that she was being haunted by the ghosts of those killed by the Winchester rifles, which was a firearm that her late husband's company had created. When the woman's husband passed away, Sarah was apparently told by a psychic that the only way to keep the spirits at bay was to build a house like a maze, to confuse and trap them within the intricacies of the building. According to this theory, Sarah would avoid being haunted by sleeping in a different bedroom every night and by taking labyrinth paths to get to various sections of her home. But ultimately, heart failure would claim Sarah's life before any ghost would get the chance, as she died in her sleep on September 5, 1922, at 83 years old. 5 months after her passing, the Winchester Mansion was open to the public. Today, there are tours available to explore the vast estate, which sits on 4.5 acres of land. But if you decide to visit this haunted destination, beware of the spirits that are said to exist within its walls. Number 5. Bull Sand Fort. Off of northern England's Lincolnshire coast sits a sea fort that dates back to World War II. It's known as the Bull Sand Fort, and it was built to accommodate an impressive 200 troops. It's surrounded by water, so the only way to access it today is by helicopter or boat. The fort is 82 feet in diameter and has 3 floors, a 2-story lookout tower, and even has a basement. The Bull Sand Fort has been in the works since 1941, along with its sister fortification, the Hale Sand Fort. Construction began in May of 1915, and they were built in order to protect the entrance to the Humber estuary. It took over 4 years to finish them though, and they weren't completed until December of 1919, which just so happened to be 1 year after the First World War had already ended. But World War II gave these fortifications a new purpose, so they were modernized and reactivated. However, both forts were regularly assaulted by enemy aircraft during this time. But it wasn't just threats from the sky that they needed to worry about. Submarines were also becoming a growing issue, so submerged netting was installed to prevent enemy subs from traveling up the estuary to Grimsby or Hull. But in the end, the military decided to abandon the forts, and by 1956 they were completely deserted. Bull Sand Fort is situated just 1.5 miles off the shore of Spurn Island. It was put up for auction in July of 2022, and the bidding began at £50,000. However, it ended up selling for a whopping £490,000 following an all-out bidding war. Now the fort has a new owner. It might be rather difficult to get up close and personal with it, but you can still visit the area and view it from a distance as it's clearly visible from the shore. Number 4. Custer Ghost Town. There's a ghost town located in Custer, Idaho, that's littered with clues of its former activity. Rusted iron mining equipment can be seen sitting in the settlement's overgrown grass, and bullet holes are clearly visible in a poker table left behind after a skirmish seemingly got out of hand. The town of Custer was founded in 1879 by speculators who claimed the land below the General Custer mill site. In the 1880s, it only had a population of 300 people, but by 1890, the town had become the most important town of the Yankee Fork, growing to accommodate around 600 individuals in 1896. Custer only has one street that runs through the middle of town. It has a schoolhouse, a miners' union hall, a jail, and at one point, it even had its own baseball team. However, by the time 1903 rolled around, the glory days of mining were fading away, and gold was becoming increasingly hard to find. The mining industry eventually dried up, and as a result, the town was completely abandoned by 1910. In 1966, the Chalice National Forest took ownership of the town, and in 1981, Custer was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Today, the site is open to the public and offers a unique glimpse into what life was like for people living here over 100 years ago. There's a museum in the original schoolhouse, a gift shop in the town saloon, and there are even gold panning demonstrations available for those who want to participate. Have you ever visited a ghost town? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 3. Eastern State Penitentiary. Designed by English-born American architect John Haviland, the Eastern State Penitentiary opened its doors on October 25, 1829. It's situated in Philadelphia's Fairmount section and is considered to be one of the most famous prisons in the entire world. Some of the penitentiary's famous inmates include gangster Al Capone and bank robber Slick Willie Sutton. Setting the standard for penal reform at the time, Eastern State's founders believed that solitary confinement could help to reform dangerous criminals. The penitentiary was known for refining the system of separate incarceration and emphasized the importance of reform instead of punishment. And on 4 different continents, an estimated 300 prisons used Eastern's unique wagon wheel floor plan as their own blueprint. The facility was operational until 1971, when the property was purchased by the city of Philadelphia, which had plans to redevelop it. The site received several proposals, including a luxury apartment complex that would be surrounded by dilapidated prison walls, but in the end, they decided against it. Instead, they left the penitentiary as it was and allowed nature to reclaim the area. By the late 1980s, a forest had grown throughout the cell blocks and a large number of stray cats moved in. In 1994, the prison opened its doors once again to offer history tours to curious individuals. And every year around Halloween, there's even an event hosted within Eastern State called Terror Behind the Walls, which is one of the area's most anticipated haunted houses. So if you dare to be scared, you can visit between September 23rd and November 12th to experience the thrill of a lifetime. Number 2. Abandoned Swedish Folk Park. Throughout the late 1800s in Sweden, recreational areas known as folk parks were common. With concert stages, large grassy areas, and playgrounds, these parks were created so that workers and families alike could have somewhere to go and relax. At the beginning of the 20th century, these folk parks were meeting places for individuals to drink, eat, dance, and socialize. But times quickly changed, and nightclubs, discos, and TV entertainment soon made these parks less popular with the general public. In northern Sweden, just outside the small town of Överkalix, one of these folk parks sit on Branneberget Hill. It was once one of the area's most popular hubs, but today it's completely abandoned and it's currently falling apart. The site is still littered with picnic tables where individuals once gathered to blow off steam after a long week. But many buildings here have broken windows and paint has started to chip on the exterior of several structures. For the time being, the folk park's future is uncertain, but until something is decided, the site serves as a popular location for urban explorers who visit the park just to catch the breathtaking view overlooking the town of Överkalix. And at number 1, Copper Mining Town. Near the Kennecott copper mine is the deserted town of Kennecott, Alaska, one of the state's best hidden gems. It's located in Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve, America's biggest national park, and it was declared in 1986 to be a National Historic Landmark. After prospectors found precious minerals such as malachite and chalcocite in the area during the summer of 1900, Kennecott became a hot site full of investment opportunities. Mining engineer Stephen Birch, backed by an investor named James Ralph, and the wealthy Havemeyer family, took notice of the area's money-making potential. The men then established the Alaska Copper and Coal Company between 1901 and 1902 and made plans to create a camp nearby in the Copper River census area in order to accommodate the company's workforce. In total, 5 mines were opened in Kennecott during this time, known as Jumbo, Motherlode, Bonanza, Glacier, and Erie. The peak year for production at the site occurred in 1916, when the mines were reportedly producing copper ore that was valued at an impressive $32.4 million. But just shy of 10 years later in 1925, geologists predicted that the mines in the area were starting to run dry, and by 1938, the mine's resources were almost entirely depleted, leaving the camp devoid of life. Today, the mining town is open to the public, although many of the structures are in shambles and some of them look as though they could blow over if there's a strong enough windstorm. But still, the site offers immaculate views and overlooks the incredible Wrangell mountain range and valley below. If you had to live in one of these abandoned places for a week, which would you choose to stay at? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.